Hello and welcome to the Keencast. Um, Sorry, it's a little late compared to usual, but nonetheless, here we are, episode two. I have mentioned before that I'm going to talk about my teaching career and you know stuff like that, and some math and other stuff. But before uh, I start really getting into my career, I had to have a beginning. And I, being the age of the Friends generation, the TV show, they loved having their titles as the one with. So, kind of keeping with that, this is the one with your dreams being your ticket out. So, yes, I talked about why I wanted to teach in the earlier one, as far as what happened with the how many sections of trig, like 3 sections in 5 minutes, and they understood. And little did I realize it would be something called peer learning, uh, and they would listen better to their peers than the teacher. And that's just a normal thing. But still, uh, I was called, and in college for 3.5 years, I was um, going for a degree in math and education and computer science. So there were, yeah, 3 bachelor's degrees. And yeah, this computer science one was fun. It was enjoyable. I had a weird mental block with assembly language, but you know, you're thinking, all right, geek boy, let's hear about you as a teacher. So with um with that, I'm going to talk about the education classes and influences on me. Now, mind you, I also did have some amazing math teachers, one of which was my calculus teacher. This was before AP Cal. And I was the lone freshman in my Cal 1 class, and Cal 2 for that matter. And that teacher, he was brilliant, probably the most brilliant teacher I had. Uh, he he was just scary smart. Of course, you got to be kind of smart to teach calculus. And he also taught the numerical methods and classes and other computer science classes, I'm pretty sure. Um, but yeah, brilliant guy. He's the one that, through my experience, he taught me to have somewhat of a work ethic and slow down, and that I have to show my work and write everything out. And yeah, he was amazing. He was. He also liked his baseball. I would go and talk baseball with him, and Dr. Lee, you were the man. You just were. Um, and I also had a lady that was a computer science teacher, and then she took over the numerical methods class after he left, and no relation, but yes, Miss Keene, Debbie Keene, she was amazing programmer. She was also into showing work, which uh, was what, when you wrote programs, you had to comment them. That way you knew what you were doing, and wasn't it was kind of a pre-copy paste, but still you had to comment, and that way you knew what you were doing, and you were letting the reader or tracer of the program or executor of the program know what you were doing. So she, between that and just working with me as far as showing grace, that should have actually been her name. She was just great with that and beyond appreciative of it. And I tried to use some of that as well with my own students. And with Dr. Lee, I mean, it was patience. Look at what you're doing as well. Be very analytical. Um, so as far as education classes went, a lot of them at the beginning were, it didn't matter what level you were majoring in. There were some that everybody had to take. Um, like human growth and development and ed psych. And of course, one of the great psychologists that I learned about in that one, that was a 300 level course, I want to say, was of course Piaget. Well, a friend of mine, we were up studying for one of those tests, and I'll just never forget my friend referring to Piaget as Pidget. So, every time I hear of ed psych or anything like that, yeah, it's not Piaget that comes to mind. It is Pidget. And I even told a teacher at my high school, the last one I taught at before I retired, I told her about Pidget. So, you know, that's just kind of a fun little college memory. Um, but also, you have your methods classes, and that's where not everybody has them. I had a math methods class. Teacher was a great guy. He had a great saying. Uh, don't impress me with how fast you can give a wrong answer. Yeah, you might see a pattern developing here with math people and being analytical. Um, nice guy, very nice guy. He was very much into calling parents, and not like calling our parents, but that was a big strategy that he had for us. Call the parents, talk to the parents, and that was something it stayed with all of us as far as having to have parent conferences and things like that. But he was kind of the first one that I really, you know, strategized that with us. Um, yeah, I had that class, the math teacher class, methods class, I guess you could say. Um, spring '87. That was when I played baseball, and most of our double headers were during that time. But I mean, all my work was turned in on time and everything. And it was A level work, but due to my absences in class because of school, that was considered a school project or school activity. It did not matter to him, and my A went to a B. And but understood. He was a good guy. He was a good teacher, and good teacher of teachers. So, um, I just happened to have heard about it that summer when report cards were mailed home. Um, then there was another. So yes, definite Dr. Rupley, good man. Um, there's also a secondary ed itself methods class, and that was just like I said, all high school teachers. That class was loaded as far as quality teachers. It really was. I mean, uh, and we all were there for each other. We were supportive of each other. It was just whenever we'd have to give a peer teaching, we would just, you know, we would learn from them, of course. Uh, but they were just outstanding teachers. And of course, I gotta say the math ones were the best. Um, but, the science ones were incredible, and, the business teachers and others. If I'm not mistaken, we had a business teacher that was probably still coaching D1. I'm pretty sure he's in there with us. Um, Great guy. But that class, um, that's one where, environment was a definite thumbs up. We even talked about that because some of the, classmates in that class were also in a class with me that, was a definite weak spot of mine and always will be a weak spot of mine, and that was making bulletin boards and cutting and pasting and stuff, and, uh, that class was different than the teacher set the tone, and so, yes, back to the 400, uh, secondary ed methods class. It was an all-star cast. We had people getting national board in there. It's a very tough process. We got people that are AP readers. We got teachers of the year. I mean, just incredible, incredible people there. And the teacher, Dr. Dowdy, like I said, she set the tone and the environment there. And she did. She said, let's compare the two classes because she heard a lot of not so happy comments, um, about the other class. So she made that a teachable moment, which was, it was outstanding. It just was. And Dr. Dowdy was awesome. And let's see, we also had a history teacher in there, or social studies, and she was a high school classmate of mine, and she's still doing well in the classroom as well, just like, some of the others that are mentioned, a couple math teachers and a chemistry teacher, the AP reader. So, yeah, that was just a great group, and it was it was great people doing great people things, and, with her encouragement, we just I just love that class. Um, so, there are a few influences there in college that I talked about. There's also a stats teacher who, if you looked at him, he was an older guy, brilliant guy. He taught combinatoric statistics, probability statistics, Dr. Gurdon. Um, he kind of looked like Orville Redenbacher because he had this white, real thick hair and the glasses. But to hear him talk, he sounded just like comedian Buddy Hackett, and he was just he was just a great guy and funny. He did not care what he said. I mean, he did, but yet he didn't. He was just a super guy. So yes, throw them in there. Uh, One of my biggest influences as a teacher was economics teacher. Me being geek boy, what do I take my freshman year that not a lot of people take uh, back then? That is, yeah, calculus and economics. Um, and the economics teacher, I had him for Econ 1 and Econ 2. And it was me, one engineering major, and the rest of the 25 kids were business majors. So, and they were all older. And so in some ways, I stuck out like a sore thumb. But the teacher, um, Mean Gene, we'll refer to him as, studied under Milton Friedman and was just, he had great comic timing. He was so funny. And I feel happy that I actually made him laugh in the middle of class. It just, I made a great, I was lucky and made a great remark, and the class laughed. And I looked, and he was laughing too, kind of covering his face, because he was well known for cracking a joke and then just waiting and keeping a straight face. And it was a supply and demand, and something about shots and uh, that were needed, and just a nice pun was made, and yeah, he just kind of stood there and covered up, and his face got red. So yes, he was a great guy, and still is, for that matter. Um, so yes, college wise, I did uh, had some great influences, and the guy that had taught most of my psych classes was just a very laid back guy. He was very smart, and you just wonder if he had a pulse sometimes. And but yeah, a good doctor, Dr. Mark. Yeah, he was good dude, great. Very also showed grace, and so anyway, I went in with that degree, and it was time, to student teach. And I got lucky because Dr. Dowdy, the aforementioned, was also my supervising teacher. And she called my high school, and I graduated from, and they said, "Yeah, we'll take him. He can do that with us. He could come back and teach with us." So yeah, it was like welcome back, Cotter, because instead of having sweat hogs, um, I was with the smart kids, and that was my schedule. Was the smart kids, and that's where a lot of my influences came from. One of them was the guy student taught under, guy named Frankie. He was awesome. He was also very analytical, very laid back. Of course, since he's math, he he just was. He Sometimes I wondered if he had a pulse. He was so laid back and cool about things. Um, so yeah, some of my influences there was him. Another guy named Willie. Willie was a very unique man. He wasn't the tallest by any means. He's about 5'8", had a handlebar mustache, and as one of my best buds said, we had him for world geography. One of my best buds said, "You might not necessarily learn geography in his class every day, but you do learn something every day from him." And he was right. But Willie was just unique. He did not put on airs. He was not a shirt and tie guy. And he was so funny. I mean, so as far as being yourself, yeah, that was definitely him. He'd kid around and cut up. He did. He had a great sense of humor, and he was a fun one to get laughing. as well. Um, of course, my Paul and Joan, became my lunch buddies. Uh, he was my driver's ed teacher, and I actually did an impression of that guy when I was a student. It was at a talent show, and I did an impression of him first thing. And he wasn't necessarily one of those guys people did impressions of. He just kind of laid low and, you know, sort of deal. But yeah, he's a driver's ed teacher. I did the impression of him. And as a junior and as a senior, I had his wife for journalism. And I'm glad I got to do that. He was a real funny guy. Even when I was a student, he was very funny. Of course, I gotta throw in. Well, before I do that, got to throw in a guy I'll refer to as. Um, he might not like it, but his initials match Franklin Delano. Um, Super guy, just a nice guy. Um, for a long time, he was a different politically in the area, but he was also just a real nice guy, real cool guy. He also made his presence known if you didn't do what was asked. So, and of course, my math teachers I had a lady named Kay, and she was neat because she would have the whole class repeat everything to do as she wrote it. She would say it, and we would say it with her, and commit that to memory. It would just commit to memory because of the kinesthetic and everything went with it. She was super cool, very nice lady, very smart lady, great teacher. And then we have Glenda. Glenda was my Algebra 1 teacher and my geometry teacher. And she was super accepting of things and super cool with things. She was very energetic. And she also would do this voice of these girls. I don't know what to do, Miss Johnson. She would do that. And I would kind of take that influence and sort of do that too. But another thing I would do is like she would break down word problems so well because she would read a sentence and say, period, stop. And I also kind of took that influence from her, but gosh, she was an amazing teacher. She was. Um, so yes, I had some great teachers. And back to Willie, he told me like my first or second day back when he saw me, and he'd talk like this. Kane, I tell you now, I'd have thumped you if I found out you didn't make something out of yourself. So yes, he was happy I came back to teaching, and so yeah, going down the who I had. Yes, I was a big Letterman fan. So the first day, I would throw a pencil behind me, it would hit the chalkboard, and some of the kids would actually make the sound of a window breaking. Um, so yeah, first period when the student taught with super kids. They just were. They were real nice. They started the day off super good. Huh. I remember a kid said something to me, a very false accusation, and I was getting along with everybody. And then that kid just said that to me, and it made me mad and upset me. I walked out of class. I didn't cry or anything. I was just really, really ticked. And I walked out of class for a minute. there were kids in that class that just lit that boy up. And some people said, like the Miss Frankie said, he's like, "Don't let that kid get to you. You know better, and I know better, and he knows better. He's just looking for somebody to blame." And again, in a very matter of factly, laid back, cool voice, as only he could. Um, there, when I had them, uh, my last day, I had them write a little essay to grade me as far as how I did as a teacher, and a couple of them predicted that I would be shoveling reindeer manure in Alaska, and which I thought was pretty funny. And they also gave me a tie. That him and a couple of his buddies, they gave me this tie. It looked like it had been, because I had to wear. Well, I don't know if you had to wear a tie every day, but I did, and that they gave me a tie that I think was made out of curtain material. And so yeah, it was meant to be an ugly tie, and it was really cool. Of course, I also got a real nice tie from Frankie, a real nice Agner tie. It was really nice, and I'm pretty sure I still have it. Um, so yeah, first period there was also a kid that he was like Jay Getz because he always seemed to have the parties, and I would hear about him. And he was a freshman, so it was just, yeah. Oh, we went to a party at his Saturday, and I'm thinking, mom lets him have all kinds of parties. Okay. Um, I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, that's first period. Second period, I mentioned before. There's some, had some amazing kids there. Had my Frankie's son, had guidance counselor's son, had some others in there that kind of handled situation wrong a couple years later, and I'm pretty sure I apologized, to them in the first video. But I'll get into, but they were incredible. They were, so far 2 super algebra 1 classes, and just great kids. Third period pre-cal, these were the brilliant ones. They just were. And there is one kid in there. Well, I'll put it this way. I've kept up with some of the pre-cal kids, and they went on. One girl is like a superhero twice over because of how tough she is. She had a health battle, and she kicked its rear end, and she also is a nurse. So like, yeah, two levels of superhero. And we have people in there that are engineers. One student in there went on to become a math teacher, and so and others that are just been very successful. Well, there is one kid in there, brilliant kid, but he just thought he was a little too smart. And it did bother people that he was like that, because he very smart, but yeah, he was just, his head just, at times you wonder how it would fit through the door. And in many ways he's a respectful kid, but he just was a know-it-all, and it got on other students' nerves because of the arrogance. So that was a little bit of an impetus for me to play a joke on the class. There were 9 kids, and 4 of them were valedictorians of senior class. So again, these weren't dummies I was dealing with, and there were a couple juniors in there. And so I thought, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll do bell curve with them, normal distribution, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, A, B, C, D, F. One of the people in there was one of the valedictorians. Her grandfather um, was a chairman of the board of education. So when I was thinking of doing this, part of me was hoping, please don't let her be on the wrong side of this. I mean, it was a bummer that there were going to be some people on the wrong side for the grade distribution of 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. But, you know, in actuality, there were 7 A's and 2 B's for the time I taught. And, you know, they were just they were brilliant kids. And so I did tell Frankie about it, you know, the day before I talked to him about it. He said, yeah, go ahead. And then I had to let one person in the class know. And I did. It was a kid whose phone number I knew. And you know, I just did it for that reason. You know, and I did that in an era where there were no cell phones, thank God. So when I told them their grades, I just put the number of points there, and they knew how many points they had out of whatever. And so I did the mark, you know, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, and I said it's a normal distribution, it's a bell curve. This is how we're going to do this. And of course, it was met with anger and hurt. Um, and, you know, I didn't let on anything. I walked out of class. The one boy did try to put up an argument, and I said, nope, sorry, bell curve, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. And he tried to argue about sample size. And I'm thinking, no, you're a little young to try to argue sample size with me. It makes a perfect normal distribution. Well, when I walked out for a minute, they said something to the teacher. Can you do something? Can you change this? He said, nope. He's the one that taught you. Those are the grades you're going to get. So yes, he did good backing me up. See, the kid that I mentioned it to and didn't say anything about it to others said, man, he just saved my parents $10,000 because I was going to go to the expensive school, but this will knock me out from there and I'll go to a cheaper one. So my parents are going to thank him. Well, kids were ready to call their parents. Yeah, there was panic in that room, more like anger. But anyway, I walked back in and changed it, erased it, and just did another mark for the 7 A's and 2 B's. So, yeah, that was why I did it. I was actually on a couple of those kids' side as far as that went. But yes, I loved that. I loved all those classes. I really did, and I'm just proud of them. Proud to be uh, part of their lives or educational journey, however you want to say it. Um, then so yeah, there's one mystery that's been addressed. Um, Fourth period was a neat group, sweet class. Uh, there were 15 kids in there, and 14 were just very sweet and happy. Um, One of the cool things about it is, I mean, they were respectful. Um, we well, I was teaching. A former classmate of mine came to visit me, and that classmate is ageless. She still looks like $1,000,000. And so yeah, she came in to see me as 20, and it was cool, we talked for a minute, and then she said, "Well, aren't you going to walk me up, walk me out?" And I looked at Frankie and said, "Frankie, can you take it?" He said, "Oh, they'll behave." So I walked her upstairs and said, "Thanks for coming by, and you look great." And you know, come back down to the room. A couple kids wrote in big letters on the board, "Great job, attaboy." And um, well, thanks. She's in some ways she was almost like my sister because we were just good friends, but still, the way the guy wrote "great job" on there. Um, so yeah, they were nice. And then fifth period, there was a kid in fourth period that um, got kind of smart with me, and it still they still had the words board and board of education, if you know what I mean. And but of course, no, I'm student teacher. That there could be just maybe an issue or two. They're like, well, we have a 10-minute break, 10-15 minute break before last period of the day. It was the coolest thing because they'd have like a 15-minute break and they would open up uh, a snack place, and kids would go out and get Reese cups, Snickers bars, whatever. They had those and Pepsis because Eastern Kentucky is Pepsi country, and so they would get that Pepsi, Mountain Dew, what have you. And so that kid got smart with me, and I said, "Well, here's what we'll do. You're going to have that little attitude toward me. You're going to think about it because you're going to come back here during that 15 minutes for the rest of the week." And you know, uh, it was appreciated as far as uh, a fair enough punishment for the kid. Um, well, on that Friday, he just came straight to me, sat down, and put his head down. Didn't say anything. And I'm like, "What happened?" I said, "I got slammed." Like, "Sounds like you said you got slammed." So come to find out that, in fact, one of the custodians in the gym is a couple years behind me, high schooler, but he was worked at school and as a custodian, and he's built like a fire plug. Well, the kid that got smart with me um, found out, and he got smart with when he got smart with that guy because I guess that guy did, slam him. Um, and it was the law of the wild, wild west because Freddie didn't get in trouble for doing that to the kid. It was just there's your consequences. Life goes on. So, nothing bad happened afterwards. It was just he got smart with him. He got put down, and that was it. And I don't mean put down in the dog sense. Just making sure. So, last period of the day, another great group of kids. I mean, I was just so blessed with them, with that whole schedule. They, you know, they were fun. They, I remember this one girl came in and they had a Reese Cup commercial where it showed someone actually licking a hole in one. And she said, could that actually, she said out loud, like in class, I wonder if that could actually be done. And well, one day later on, she actually d- answered her own question with In fact, yes, it could be done. And and so that was pretty cool. But yeah, the had a basketball player in that group who went on to give birth to a girl who played basketball for University of Kentucky. And her and her husband were just incredible. They still are incredible basketball minds. And so I had like some little brothers and sisters of people I knew, and some, teachers' kids. Great group. Well, another interesting thing that I did was back to that first period kid that had all the parties. And he mentioned to me one time, you ought to come to one of them. All right, I'll take him up on it this time. And it was toward the end of, my time teaching. And so I went. I showed up and his mom was there. And it was, I guess they inside and outside because she had a trampoline and one of the real energetic kids from sixth period, who the first kid I ever took a hat from, Glenn. And he got on the trampoline and was just going crazy, just jumping, flipping, just energetic. And talked to the boy's mom, the host's mom, and the host came. And the look on his face was priceless because you're actually here, Mr. Keenan. Yeah, I told you I'd come to one of them or something like that when you invited me. I said I'd make it. So yes, Jay Gatsby. I showed up at his house. And hopefully you guys are very much catching the positive stuff because I mentioned it before. Guidance counselor's son was in my second period class. The guidance counselor told me, when you retire from teaching, you're only going to remember the good stuff. Well, in many ways, he's right. But I am talking about the good stuff. Um, no rain, no rainbows is the Hawaiian proverb. But, I prefer to look at the good stuff. And with the way I started with student teaching, with the 4 algebras and a trig, and doing a great job with them, I'm just super ready, to conquer the world. And another big time influence on me that I didn't talk about, and now I will, was the principal. Yes, the principal was my pal. He set the tone, and he's just a smart guy. And he was also glad that I came back to teach. And I talked to him this past summer, and he hasn't aged. His demeanor hasn't changed. He's just a super guy. One of the coolest things he did was, it was getting around testing time, and it was an in-service day, so only the teachers were there. So yes, you got Geek Boy here, and then the rest of the faculty all in one classroom. And he started talking about seeing these 2 kids arguing over an answer at lunch. And he said, and I don't know if Radar or his friend got the answer right or not, but they were both really putting up a fight over who was, or which was. And so him doing that to me like that was just really cool. I mean, he would, the principal would also have assemblies, and it would be he would motivate us. He was very much an education is, he wasn't it just for the paycheck. He actually, he cared. And he said, he would say, people are going to look at where you're from and not how educated you are. And so, get it, educate yourselves and, be somebody. And that was right along with what me and my friends were like. We would compete healthy and everything. So finally, I have this. And because it's going to bring up another part of what I'm going to do and how I usually end the Keen cast. Okay. For those scoring at home, or even if you're watching a computer, yeah, that song is Sammy Hagar's song, Mas Tequila. And what I am going to do those who are not with us anymore that have been influences on my teaching. Frankie, Willie, Kay, and if anyone in the college there is not with us anymore, what I definitely say, what I definitely do is salute you and thank you for the help that you've given me. So this ends the second one. And I just want to remind you that if you need help, ask for help. It doesn't matter how smart, rich, whatever standing you have in your community. You've got to ask for help if you need it. So thank you again, everybody. We start with year one. Hopefully it'll be in about a week. So thank you. Good night. Drive safely. Again, ask for help.